The thunderstorm turned violent and Ace looked outside his window. An unknown person killed the psycho. "This is getting interesting." Clark stood beside him and asked, "So, who would have killed the psycho?" "That's an interesting question," Ace thought. At the police headquarters, Harper threw a newspaper toward his assistant and shouted, "It's all over the news. A psycho was killed while he was under our custody." One of the police officers said, "We have taken the security camera footage. The footage is dark and that person is wearing a mask. It is difficult to see anything. This situation could have been avoided if you all would have done the duty properly. I am not surprised why crime rates are so high here." Harper received a call. He picked up the call. After the call ended, he opened his messaging application and saw an image being sent to him. He saw the picture in disbelief. Bloody hell! What has happened to her face? It was raining outside. Harper, sitting in the car, looked at the images. The vehicle stopped at a place. Police officers were standing there and a body was lying on the roadside. Harper came out of the car and wore a raincoat. He moved toward the body and looked at the face of the body. At the police headquarters, Harper asked, "What's the response from the team? Have they got any clue who killed Jason?" "Sir, they are still finding the clues." "What if this person who killed Jason is also behind this murder?" Harper said. "But sir, the way of killing is different from the way Jason was killed." Harper thought for some minutes and then said, "Tell the team to gear up." In an abandoned building, a girl was lying on a chair with her hands and legs tied. Her mouth was stuffed with a cloth, and she found breathing difficult. She looked around, but there was no one. A man entered the room. He was only wearing an apron. He went near the tape recorder and played a tape. "It's a lovely day today. So whatever you've got to do, you've got a lovely day to do it in, that's true. And I hope whatever you've got to do is something that can be done by two." As the girl looked at the man's face, she got scared. She screamed, but her voice was muffled due to the cloth in her mouth. The man came near to the girl and looked at her for a few minutes. He smiled and took a blade out of his pocket. He grabbed the girl's lips and started cutting them from the right end. He dragged the blade toward the left end of the lips. The blood rushed out of the cut and his white apron turned red. The girl screamed and her body shook in pain. The man pushed the blade and the girl's lips were in his hand. The man looked at her and the smile on his face faded. He said in an unintelligible voice, "You don't have it. You are not the one." The girl was screaming in pain as blood was rushing out of her mouth. Her teeth were exposed and she was unable to feel her lower face. The man kicked the chair on which the girl was lying. The girl fell to the ground. The man sat on his knees and grabbed her upper jaw with his left hand and her lower jaw with his right hand and pulled them in opposite directions and broke them. The girl shook in pain and died in a few minutes. The man dragged the body out of the building to the backyard. He looked around and saw a man standing outside the backyard of the next building. He was wearing a black coat and pants with a devil mask on his face and a black hat on his head. The man in the mask stared at him for a few minutes and then turned away. The man kept looking at him as he disappeared in the night. The next morning, Harper received a call. He took his car and went to a site where there was the dead body of the girl. He reached the site and upon looking at the face of the girl, he was horrified. He turned his back to the body. This psycho is a gruesome murderer. In the abandoned building, the man stood in an apron, looked at the mirror and smiled. He looked at every spot on his face and his teeth for the next 5 minutes. Then, he started moving his hands on his face and felt the warmth of his hands. He turned back and grabbed a blade. He entered a room with another girl tied to the chair. He went near the tape recorder and resumed the tape. "But if you've got something that must be done, and it can only be done by one, there is nothing more to say, except it's a lovely day for saying, it's a lovely day." He stood beside the girl and smiled. She screamed in horror, but her voice was muffled due to the cloth in her mouth. He opened her mouth and looked at her teeth carefully. After inspecting all the teeth, the man went outside the room and came back with a hammer. He grabbed the girl's head and shouted in an unintelligible voice, "It is always said to brush your teeth regularly. Have you seen the condition of your teeth?" and smashed the hammer on her teeth. He continuously hit the hammer. Her teeth broke and her mouth filled with blood with pieces of teeth in it. After continuously smashing her teeth for 5 minutes, He looked at the girl. He yelled and hit the hammer on her head, killing her. After some hours, Harper and his team were investigating the new dead body. It's been the third body. It needs to stop. Is there any clue? Harper asked. No, sir, the assistant said, but a delivery man came with a parcel for you. Harper opened the parcel and looked inside it. There was a piece of paper with something written on it. He just wants the best smile. Harper looked at his assistant for a while and after thinking for some minutes, said, I think I know where it is going. That night, Harper and his team took some files and started reading them. Harper shouted, You all know what you are looking for? Yes, sir. One of the officers shouted, Sir, have a look at this. Harper looked at the file and said, I think you found the right file. Look for the address of this person. After some hours, Harper and his team reached outside an old building. He walked near the front of the building where he saw an old rusty board with something written on it. He tried to read it but wasn't able to. He knocked on the door next to the board. There was no answer. He knocked again but it was again unanswered. He tried to glance through the window but it was wrapped with papers. He waved to his team and pointed towards the door. The frontman stood before the door and hit the hammer on the wooden door. The door splintered and the man hit the door again, creating a hole in the door. He hit the door continuously till it shattered into pieces. Harper and the team entered the building and they all scattered to check the building. Harper was examining the structure and entered another room. He stopped and found a chair in the center of the room. He went near the chair and looked under the chair. He found some broken teeth and blood under the chair. Harper raised his voice, Bring evidence bag. We got a lot to put into it. At the police headquarters, Harper was waiting in his room when his assistant came with a file. Sir, the report is here. Harper looked at the report and said to the assistant, This is madness. All those teeth and blood carry the DNA of more than 10 people. We have to speed up or this psycho will increase the work for us. The man opened his eyes. He was lying on the floor of a dark room. He looked around but could not see anything due to the dark. He touched his face and was shocked. He started screaming, but as he started screaming, his mouth started shrinking on its own and it disappeared. He touched his face but was unable to find his mouth. Suddenly, a door opened with a creaking voice. A ray of light came out of the other room. The man looked at the room and stood up. A shadow stood in front of him. As the shadow started walking, the man began to move away from the shadow. The shadow took out a knife and continued walking toward the man. The man tried to ask for help but couldn't. The shadow smiled and ran toward the man. The man panicked and got caught by the shadow. The shadow raised his scissors and laughed. The man woke up in shock and looked around. He was on the roof of a building. He stood up, looked at the sky and laughed. Harper was sitting with a hand on his head. He looked at the assistant sitting beside him and said, What are you doing? The assistant didn't say anything. Here, one psycho killed tens of people and then we caught him. Then that psycho is killed by another psycho and we don't know who that psycho is. While investigating this, there comes another psycho who has already killed tens of people and we don't know what to do next. What the fuck is going on? I am going mad and I have got a team of losers who can't do anything. Now, what are you looking at? Go outside and do some work, Harper shouted. His assistant left the room at once. In an old abandoned building, the man washed himself. He applied white paint to his face and lipstick to his lips and cheeks which were cut to the ears. He came outside the room, with an apron on and grabbed a knife. He walked to another room where a girl was tied to a chair. The man smiled and stood beside her. As Harper looked at the evidence in his room, his assistant came running to him. He was out of breath and looked at Harper. Take it easy. What happened? Harper asked. The assistant took a deep breath and said, There is a fresh report of a missing girl. Harper stood up and said, Give me details. It's Daisy. The report was filed yesterday evening. Harper thought for a second. Tell the team, we are going to the same address. At the building, the man played the tape recorder. There is nothing more to say. Except it's a lovely day for saying. It's a lovely day. It's a lovely day today. If you've something that must get done. Now don't forget 2 heads are better than just 1. He checked the teeth of the girl and smiled. He took out the blade and wiped it with his hands. He grabbed the girl by her forehead and passed the blade through her left cheek. The blood started gushing out and he slid the blade towards the lips. The girl began trembling with pain. The man kept sliding the blade till it cut the left cheek and the lip from the left side. He took the blade out of the mouth and put his finger into the big cut in the girl's left cheek. He grabbed both sides of the left cheek and opened the cut. He looked at her face and laughed. Harper and his team left the office. On the way, his assistant asked, "Sir, how were you certain that this was our man? Remember the card I got? The message on that card was a direct indication that the psycho was one of the people who wants the best smile and whose profession is related to smile." The assistant thought and said, "Dentist." "Exactly. That's why we went to the records building to check if there was any record of the dentist with a dark past, and I got what I was searching for." "What did you get?" Harper giggled and said, "A name. Dr. Edward." "I haven't heard that name," his assistant said in a confused tone. "You don't read newspapers? People of your age just keep scrolling social media for useless cringe videos. There was an article in the newspaper some years ago. When I saw this name, I remembered that article at once. This name will help us to conclude this case." At the building, the man passed the blade through the girl's right cheek. The blood continued gushing out and he slid the blade towards the lips. The girl kept trembling with pain. The man kept sliding the blade till it cut the right cheek and the lip from the right side. He took the blade out of the mouth and put his finger into the big cut in the girl's right cheek. He grabbed both sides of the right cheek and opened the cut. He looked inside her mouth and laughed. "Perfect. And now it's time when two smiles will collide." The girl's body shook with pain. Her eyes widened in shock and her upper body was covered in blood. She tried to say something but couldn't. The man brought a bottle of Dr. Spirit, put it on cotton and started cleaning the blood on her face. The girl shook more as she felt a burning sensation of the spirit. The man took a new piece of cotton and started cleaning the blood on her teeth. Harper and his team reached the address. He got out of the car and asked his team to surround the building. He stood beside the door with a gun and looked at his assistant standing on the other side of the door with a gun. Harper kicked the door, opening it. He walked inside the building and looked around. The whole room was now painted white. Harper looked around and looked at the door of another room. He walked toward the door and opened it. As he entered the room, he raised his gun. In front of him was sitting a man with a cut from the left ear to the right ear passing through the lips in the shape of a smile. He looked at Harper and started singing. "It's a lovely day today. So whatever you've got to do, you've got a lovely day to do it in. Where is the girl?" Harper shouted. "Mr. Better Half? I'm getting her ready for the important day of her life. Today, the two smiles will collide which will result in a supernova giving birth to the new world." Harper punched his face. "Shut up, you piece of shit. Just tell me where she is." A policeman entered a room with a girl. Harper and his team looked at her and were shocked. "What have you done to her?" "She's my better half. She has the perfect white smile like me. Her teeth are bright white and her lips are beautiful. Her smile is the most beautiful smile I have ever seen." Harper arrested the man and took him to the police station. The girl was taken to the hospital. The man was tied to a chair. Harper sat in front of him. "I remember the article in the newspaper some years ago about your father, the greatest dentist in the town." The man looked down in fear. "Don't talk about him. Your father's name was Dr. Edward and he had a son too. The one who is sitting in front of me. Ain't I right, Victor?" Victor looked up and smiled. The article talked about his obsession with achieving the perfect smile. "Your father's fixation on oral perfection stemmed from his childhood trauma of having crooked teeth. He subjected you to rigorous oral hygiene regimens, forcing you to maintain impeccable dental health. Your father controlled every aspect of your life. His obsession with your smile became an unhealthy fixation, leading to emotional and psychological abuse. Your mother didn't bother to intervene. And then, your father's dental practice was involved in a scandal. A patient sued your father for botching a procedure, leaving them disfigured. The media scrutiny and loss of reputation devastated your father, who became reclusive and abusive. One fateful night, his anger boiled over, and he brutally assaulted you, cutting your lips from ear to ear to create a grotesque, permanent smile. The man didn't say anything. Your screams were muffled by his father's hands, and you were left with physical and emotional scars," Harper said with a grin. Victor laughed. "You are wrong. I have a mission to get a girl who has a perfect smile like me. You should know the concept of the smile." Smiles are portals to alternate dimensions, revealing glimpses of parallel universes where teeth are doors, lips are windows and joy is the currency. Every time someone smiles, a tiny wormhole opens, sucking in nearby thoughts and replacing them with memories of forgotten laughter. The curvature of a smile determines the trajectory of fate, bending reality's fabric to weave tales of wonder or madness. Some smiles are black holes, devouring sorrow and spitting out stardust. Others are cosmic events, collapsing time and space into a single, radiant instant. And when two smiles collide, the resulting supernova births new worlds, where happiness is the gravitational force holding existence together. Harper grabbed Victor's hair and started punching him till his tooth broke and blood started coming out of his mouth. "That's your perfect smile." Victor started crying. "What did you do?" "My teeth." "What will happen to my smile?" "What will happen to your smile?" "That will be decided by the court where you will be presented tomorrow." Harper got out of the room. His assistant was waiting for him and asked, "Sir, how did you relate the name on that record to the newspaper article?" "When I read the name on the record, it had the name of Dr. Edward, and it struck me that I had read this article about him and his child. Dr. Edward died in the electric chair, so who would be the one carrying on his legacy? The other person whose name was in that article. His son, Victor." "Sometimes reading the newspaper is good," Harper said. "Sir, do you think the court will give him any punishment?" "They will send him to the correction facility as he will be declared mentally unstable." The same verdict was given for Tom. Harper thought for a few minutes and said, "We have to prove that he is not mentally unstable. It's not an easy task, but more important is keeping him safe till the morning. Everyone has left the building. Only you and I are here. That psycho who killed Jason is still out there. Sir, you should go home and take a rest." "I will stay here at night and we'll see if everything's all right," his assistant said. Then only, a man wearing a black coat and pants and a devil's mask walked toward him. "Yes, sir? Why are you here?" The person didn't say anything and threw a knife at Harper's assistant. The knife struck his neck. The assistant grabbed the knife and took it out. The blood rushed out of his neck and he fell on the ground, suffocating while grabbing his neck. Harper took out his gun, but before he could do anything, the man ran and kicked the gun. He grabbed Harper's face and said in a heavy voice, "Watching everyone die thrills me, but you are special. I won't kill you so easily." The man sprayed on Harper's face. Harper became unconscious. The man grabbed the knife covered in blood, lying beside Harper's assistant's body, and entered the room where Victor was tied to the chair. Victor looked at the man and got tense. "You had more potential as a psycho," the man said. The masked man grabbed Victor by his head. He put his knife on Victor's throat and slowly started slashing his throat. The people of the world must all be killed. As the blood rushed out, the masked man licked the blood from the knife. He took his blood-stained knife and walked out of the room. He picked Harper, took him out of the building, put him in a car and drove away. As Harper came back to senses, he found himself lying on the floor with his legs tied with chains. He looked around and found a lady lying in front of him but couldn't see his face as it was covered with a black cloth. The masked man entered the room. He looked at Harper and came near him. He grabbed Harper's neck and took out his knife, asked God if he was able to stop the devil. Harper's eyes widened as the cold blade pressed against his throat. The masked man's grip tightened, his breath hot against Harper's ear. "You think you're the devil reincarnate?" Harper spat. The masked man chuckled, low and menacing. "I am the one who brings darkness and you are a mere obstacle." Suddenly, the lights flickered and died. The room plunged into darkness. Harper felt the knife slip. Just a fraction. He seized the moment, twisting free. "Run!" Harper yelled, but his voice was lost in the blackness. Footsteps echoed, heavy and frantic. Harper stumbled forward, hands outstretched. Then, a faint glow emanated from the corner. The masked man stood, illuminated by a burning candle. As Harper stumbled toward the door, he found himself in a room with no door or window. His heart pounded as he turned around and found the masked man standing in front of him. The masked man started laughing maniacally. "Game's not over, Harper. You can't escape the devil's playground because here, death is the only checkmate."